Welcome to the Business of Wholesaling podcast. I'm your host, Drew Carroll from Leadzolo, and I'm here today with Al Monteiro from NTAX Solutions. Now, I'm incredibly excited for today. I got to spend a little bit of time with Al just before this recording. Al is going to talk about two things that I am absolutely most passionate about: sales and systems. I've had the privilege of growing multiple companies myself, and I know undeniably that sales and systems are the two things that will make the largest impact. We could wrap in marketing in there, but when we're talking about people and we're talking about managing and we're talking about growing a company, sales and systems, I think, are absolutely integral. So I'm incredibly excited to have Al on to talk about those two things since he is a specialist in them. Al, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Drew. It's a pleasure to be on your podcast.
Awesome. So, Al, you are, I noticed, from Unionville, Ontario, which is very interesting. Most people are from the States that are on this podcast. So Unionville, Ontario, what brought you there?
Well, I'm originally from India, but I left India when I was 18 years old to do my undergrad studies, and I came to the US and I went to a small private liberal arts school in Worcester, Ohio,
Cool.
where I did my undergrad schooling in liberal arts and graduated with a computer science degree. And I lived and worked in Ohio for 6, 7 years and then moved to California. And then my entire visa process to convert it from a temporary work permit to a green card was taking too long. So I applied to Canada as a backup just with the intention to come and park myself for here for a year and then go back on a fresh 6 years of a work permit in the US. But once I moved to Canada, Toronto especially, I just love the lifestyle here a lot better, in terms of we discovered a lot of, extended family that was in and around the vicinity. My first kid was born here. So we started to grow some roots here. And then I decided, no, I don't think I want to go back. So, yeah, I ended up in a suburb of Toronto, Unionville, and I've been here since 98.
Amazing. Yeah, Toronto is my favorite city in the world.
Yeah, you're Canadian, right?
I am.
Yeah. Which
I
part
am
of
indeed. I'm currently in Whitby, so I'm like
oh,
45 minutes from you, not very far at all.
you're right next door.
Yep. And I used to live all over. I used to open some grocery stores. You probably know the chain. Across Ontario, I used to. So yeah, I've lived almost everywhere in Ontario where there's a grocery store.
Gotcha.
Um, so anyways, that's just really interesting. It's really cool. I don't get to talk to a lot of people from here. So sales.
Mhm.
What brought you to sales? Now, I think that's a funny question because I think all roads lead to sales if we're going to talk business. But I'd love to know like what your specific personal journey was that brought you to where you are today, where you're focused on sales and systems and helping people optimize their businesses.
Interesting. Yeah, it's been an interesting journey. I never thought myself as a sales professional, because, I mean, there's this thing that concept of sales is icky, they're pushy, and, used car salesman mentality, that kind of stuff. It's just like, I just have to go through that process. Any business at the end of the day, if you want to make money, you got to sell a product or a service, and that requires some sales skills. Some people do it really well, some people suck at it, and some people are plain right, fraudulent. Right?
Yeah.
They'll sell you smoke and mirrors and move on. So,
Yes.
so, sales was never something that I envisioned as a career path myself. I fell into it by accident. I used like I said, my education was in computer science, and I was involved in building systems and all that stuff for banking solutions and all that stuff. Eventually moved into project management and management consulting. But in my corporate days, back in 2014, I had a health scare where suddenly I collapsed at work.
Oh, wow.
And once the doctors got done with me, they kind of said, "Look, you got high cortisol levels in your body, and your liver is enlarged, and you are obese, and you're this, and you're that, and hypertension, blood pressure, you're borderline diabetic." I mean, when they threw the book at me,
Yeah.
just realized, what the hell, man? I thought I was kind of okay. Yes, I'm, a little pudgy, but I still play sports. I'm a big soccer fan. I still play whatever. I'm active. But then after all the things were done, it was all boiled down to one thing, which is basically you have very high stress levels. And I wore that as a badge of honor because my calling card was to walk into organizations in a stressful situation and take on a project that's in the doldrums and it's really, floundering, where I would get, be asked to kind of rescue that project. And I did that 2 or 3 times, and it just became one of those things where, hey, Al's the guy to go for, whenever there's a troubled project. In that process, I took on a lot of stress, a lot of travel, a lot of whining, dining with clients, traveling, jet setting here, there, big profile projects. I was paid really well, but it took a toll on my body. And then eventually, when I realized in my mid 40s that, hey, your days are numbered, that's when I
Yeah.
decided to kind of say, look, the day I stop working or I'm not able to work, my income levels stop, because I started to, transition from being a full-time employee to doing contract work, contract consulting. And that was really good money. Overnight doubled my salary, but in the process, I took on a lot of stress. They expected me to walk on water. I was putting in 12-hour days, 15-hour days sometimes working the weekends. And you know what? The significance and the recognition that I got from that was my juice that kept me going.
Yeah.
But when it came time to the bonus, at the end of the year, as a salaried person, the bonus would be like, whoa, wait a second, that's less than minimum wage for the amount of hours I put in.
Yep.
And that's when I decided I needed to do something different. And I started imagining and envisioning, like, how do I, have my money go a lot further? So I started researching other places like, Costa Rica, Panama, Honduras, immigrating there and just saying, hey, with my savings, the money that I set aside for my retirement and all that stuff, I could live much better life. And that was a dream. So I had sort of subscribed to um, a mailing list with this thing called welovecostarica.com, you
All
know,
right.
and this guy used to send out regular articles about how to buy property in Costa Rica, how to learn the language, how to negotiate, how to do this, new, development areas, real estate, this, that, and the other. Very informative articles from this guy who was a Scottish expat who had quit the Wall Street and moved to Costa Rica and was doing really well there. So I started sort of following him, but nothing happened. I mean, and this is the proof. I mean, I'm sure a lot of your people are into email marketing and they think email marketing is dead. No, it's not dead. Because you know what? 5 years later,
Yep.
I saw an article which basically kind of said, um, hey, you think you've been on my blog for the longest time. What are you going to do? If you move here, and if you move here, you don't speak the language, nobody's going to hire you. And even if you don't want to work and you've saved enough money for retirement, you want to do something, to keep yourself busy. So the owner of that blog had said, hey, he had come across a interesting program, which is just $49 to learn how to do affiliate marketing.
All right.
So I clicked on that link. I still have that email because that brings back, that was the start of my journey.
Yeah.
I clicked on that link and went through that program. And next thing I know, I was working with some, they call themselves coaches. So this coach would basically say, hey, have you done those lessons? Have you done the program? Okay, this is it. And then finally it came to a point where there was a pitch for a $2,500 deep dive into the affiliate marketing course. And they explained the comp plan. And it was almost like network marketing. So I
Yeah.
said, this is interesting. Maybe this is something that I could do as a side hustle. And I enrolled into that. And I started to do that. Initially, it was not easy. It was very difficult. I lost a lot of money, but
Hmm.
I stayed the course. And then finally started to, turn around and started making some money in affiliate commissions. It wasn't lifestyle income. I still had my full-time job, but it got to a point where it was really funny because this other company that I worked for, he invited me. I mean, it was my evaluation time, this boutique consulting firm, and they gave me the raise and all that stuff. And when they gave me the raise and the bonus, it was again very tiny. I'm like, wait a second, when I had interviewed with you guys, you said this is the potential. I've done everything that I had to do. I've rescued these projects and blah blah blah. And the owner of the company said, Al, this is how it is. This is economics. There's downward pressure on salaries right now, blah, blah, blah. Give me the whole thing. And he said, look, I'd love to give you an $80,000 bonus check, but I cannot because $80,000, those sort of checks are only earned by people who close sales. You've not done any sales. I'm like, well, that was not part of my job description to begin with. And he started to say, look, he used to be a salesperson. He's gotten bonus checks of that much, but he closed $500,000 in a deal. That's why he got that check. So, he'd love to cut me that sort of checks. I said, but you don't have a sales role here. I mean, not that I'm interested in. You specifically hired me to do this at this big bank. So that kind of planted a seed. I'm like, really, salespeople can earn that much? And I said, yeah, why not? If they, I mean, if that's the way, even if you make one or two deals in a year, it's okay. But there's a lot of work that goes into building up that sale. So just as I had had that conversation a week later, it was just serendipitous, The owner of the
Yeah.
company, the affiliate marketing company, his assistant called me out of the blue when I was vacationing and said, hey, so and so would like to speak with you, about something. I said, the owner of this affiliate marketing company wants to speak with me. What's it about? Did I get into trouble or something? So I got on the phone with him on Skype and he said, Al, you seem to be doing really well. What do you think about coming and joining the sales team over here? You know, like I've never done sales. That's when I said, just last week I had a conversation with this boss of mine, a boss's boss, who
Yeah.
basically said, dude, get into sales. I said, okay, maybe let me give it a shot. And I'll confess, I started with that organization in the first 3 months. This is way back in 2016. In the first 3 months, I just was putting in 60, 70 hours a week in addition to my full-time job.
Oof.
And I realized, man, this is tough. This is not easy. I'm learning the art of sales, how to have conversations with people, how to kind of negotiate with them, how to kind of enroll them in helping them get out of their own way. I'm learning all of this stuff by watching other people's calls and, samples and studying and all that stuff on the sales techniques that I started to get better, but it was still at a very high amount of time that I was putting into that entire process. So, something happened where that company's rotator is where, when leads come in, they get distributed to different salespeople based on how they're performing and what capacity they can handle. The rotator broke and I was getting like 30, 40, 50 leads per day. And I had to get in touch with all of these people. And I said, wait a second, something's wrong. Stop my lead flow. I can't do this.
Yeah.
But it kept going on for 2, 3 weeks. And that's when I realized I needed to have an efficient system to kind of handle this. And I engaged my son, who was 16 at the time, to say, hey, Kyle, can you take care of this for me? I mean, I need this sort of thing where I can extract the emails and all that stuff, put it onto a spreadsheet so I can handle them better because their CRM systems and their entire sales system was 2G. And I just wanted to handle it in a different way. And that took on a life of its own. And very soon, I was outperforming the top salespeople
Yeah.
you know. So that's how I started getting into sales. And, once I started to see the amount of money one can make in that process, I was like, I don't need to do my full-time job. And, as I went along with my developing my sales process and sales system, um, I used to just look at simple things like how do I increase my revenue by 10% month over month? What is the little tweak I can make to the system to get a 10% jump? And at the same time, being the lazy guy that I am, being a systems guy, how do I make my system very efficient where I put in like maybe 5% less time every month? Just come up
Yeah.
with some solutions and started implementing those. And I was kind of doing gangbusters doing that.
And it's brilliant too. And I think, and I don't want anybody listening here to really kind of miss the point in what you're saying here, which is that a system is optimizable. You can optimize a system. You cannot optimize something if you have not systematized it. So
Bingo.
it reminds me, and I'll have you finish your story, but it reminds me of a conversation I literally just had last week with somebody. I was looking at optimizing our sales process. We have 7 or 8 salespeople now at this point, so we're very very focused on making sure that's optimized. And I was talking to our COO, and he had the privilege of coming up through sales. He started with Tony Robbins' team 10 or 15 years ago. And he's just like, let me tell you a story. He's like, when I was working at Tony Robbins' team, we were doing the one product that I was working on was doing over $100 million of sales a year. He's like, there was no system. He said, if you're a salesperson, your cell phone was just on the rotator. And he's like, your phone would ring any time of day, any time of night. You couldn't tell them when you didn't want leads. He's like, you could be talk on a sales call and you'll like on hold, like waiting line will be another person trying to call in. He's like, it was a disaster. He's like, from kind of internal, like, but externally, they were doing so much, they never thought the need to really optimize or focus too much on it because money was just pouring in. Needless to say, it was a program they had to discontinue because it became very unprofitable very quickly, and they weren't able to fix it because they didn't build the system around it. So then they moved into other products and started with systems first. So I
You know
thought it was
what?
a brilliant example of what you're talking about. Applies to everybody. If you are a one-man shop or you have 100 employees, you should always be thinking about systems so that you can do exactly what Al's talking about, which is optimizing every single day rather than scrambling and trying to pick the dollars up off the floor every day, which I think a lot of us
Bingo,
tend.
bingo. You know what? And it's interesting that you say that because, I'm a firm believer that systems work, people fail.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah. And there's an acronym that I throw out to some of my students when it comes to training them in sales. The, I break the system down. I mean, I saw this somewhere and I've just adapted it. System, if you look at the way it's spelled, I just say it basically stands for save yourself time, energy, and money.
I love
That's what
that.
system spells.
I
But
love
yeah,
that.
systems can be optimized, people can be optimized, but a system has that leverage that
Yeah.
allows you to produce a lot bigger output. And most of the salespeople, I mean, they've got their tools available, Salesforce, Go High Level, all these things can systemize those things, but then they still have certain limits. At the end of the day, the salesperson themselves has to systemize themselves to use that system very efficiently. So that's why I kind of call my to take that and an optimal selling system and optimize it further. So I specialize in building OSS, optimized sales systems.
I love it. That's awesome. That's fantastic. So sorry, bring us back to the CPA network, I believe is what you're talking about, and
Yeah,
their system.
so no, not the CPA network. So this affiliate marketing company,
Sure.
I started to close sales for them, and then they promoted me to the level two salesperson, where you'd have them go through a journey and get them to do the thing. And the way I don't do the typical selling, the way hardcore sales. It's more like heart centered. You know, it's
Right.
like this person has invested some money, be it $39 or be it two and a half or $5,000. You know, it doesn't matter. They've invested their money because they have a pain point. Something is not right in their life. It could be financial freedom, time freedom, location freedom. It could be something else, whatever. At the end of the day, they have a pain point, and if that product can provide a solution to that pain point, the role of the enrollment advisor is to help them connect the dots to that pain point, the solution to the pain point, to say, look, this can help you. There are
I
no guarantees, but it can help you.
Yeah.
Now let's figure out how do I help you get out of your own way? You
That
know,
resonates tremendously with me because I look at sales as leadership. I look at
exactly.
sales like my job isn't to take your money. My job is to help you better yourself and to understand if what I currently have is something that will add value to your life. And if I think that is, then I'm going to help advise you into that. If I don't, then like I tell my salespeople this all the time, I am way more happy if I listen to a call recording and you told somebody this probably isn't a great fit for you. Your money is probably better invested elsewhere. You should probably come back to us at a later date. That warms my heart because it means that we're
Exactly.
doing it doesn't, there's people that are going to be like, oh yeah, you're happy when you guys aren't making sales. No, when I hear a call like that, I would assume that sales rep probably has a very high close conversion because they're doing their job by actually talking to the person as a human and getting to understand them. And if they understand somebody well enough to tell them that our product is not a good fit, then I can be very confident that they're understanding the people who our product is a great fit for and helping them, enrolling them into our software. So
Yeah.
I really resonate with what you're saying there.
Bingo. Yeah, and traditionally the way sales has been taught is to kind of do these verbal mechanics to kind of get the person to say yes four times in a row and all. I don't believe in that. I mean, that's an old technique. The average consumer today, with the advent of internet and exposure to a lot of things, have they become smarter as well. They're like, look, I know when you're trying to go for my wallet.
Yeah.
Okay, they can a smart consumer can smell that in a
Yeah.
call. You know,
Yeah.
that's why I don't do phone calls. I do Zoom calls. I look them in the eye and I basically say, look, you know, there is a solution here. Now, with your permission, can I share that solution with you? You know.
Yeah. So what do you notice when you come in to a company and specifically on their sales team? if if you had to, like, gun to your
Mhm.
head, you were only allowed to implement one thing in every single company, and that one thing was in your mind going to cover like the biggest issues that every sales team has, what would you do if you were only allowed to implement one initiative into a sales team? what would you do? Not
You
knowing
know,
anything about the sales team.
exactly. The first thing I would ask is like, okay, what is your conversion rate right now? What's
Mm,
your RPL or DPL, dollar per lead? If you cannot maintain that metric, you're not a mature enough organization. You just kind of trying to throw spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks. And that's fine. That's not an ideal customer for me to work with. Okay, but if they have certain systems in place where they're at least measuring a KPI, like dollar per lead, or how many conversations you had, what your close rate is. I mean, these are fundamentals. I look at that and say, okay, fine. If the product has potential, and if your marketing is dialed in that you're getting the right kind of people, and you just need to handle the volume, you just don't have a big enough sales team. The first thing I say, okay, let's figure out a way on how to get that DPL up, dollar per lead up by a margin, because that could mean, more revenue for the company basically means they can invest a lot more money on infrastructure, on marketing, and all the other aspects, fulfillment. At the end of the day, there are three main systems in any business. The first system is customer acquisition system, which marketing owns. Then there's a conversion system, which the sales head, holds that the reins on that. And finally, there's a fulfillment system where you're going to fulfill on the customer who's bought that high ticket product. So these are three systems. And I think the most crucial in any organization is the conversion system, the enrollment system. Because without money, you do not have money to do marketing, you do not have money to do fulfillment. If you
Agreed.
focus on that and say, look, I need to do something here to get more revenue, you know, and I have faith and belief in my product that it is transformative to a buyer, then let's talk about how do we zero in on getting more revenue, you know. So that's the one thing I tell business owners. Look at your sales process and see, is there room for improvement, or have you optimized it to such a level that you just cannot get any squeeze any more out of it? You know,
Yeah.
that's when, somebody like me, I can kind of consult with them and say, look, here are some lost opportunities. The problem in a lot of sales is that, listen, a typical salesperson, they got back-to-back appointments, right? And they get burnt out. Salespeople, what excites them is lead volume, because they know what the conversion rates are. They had 8 conversations, 1 hour conversations, say, 45-minute conversation, 15 minutes for admin to enter the notes in the CRM and all that stuff. They will do their 45-minute spiel, go through a presentation and yes or no, and then they'll try to go through those verbal machinations to kind of get them to, say yes or whatever. It doesn't work out. Okay, let's move on because I'm looking at my clock. Okay, I'm not going to close this deal. Let me move on to the next one. After 8 conversations, if you close two, hey, you got two divided by 8. That's your conversion rate, right?
Mhm.
But the problem there is that the 6 people who said no, they didn't really say no.
Right.
There's something that was left unresolved in their mind. So I, I don't look at anybody who's saying no in a sale as a no. I look at that as a maybe. And the job of the salesperson or the sales team is to have a very effective follow-up system, you know. So there are two aspects to that, which is, one is the passive nurture where you're warming up the lead. Once they
Mhm.
buy, now you got to have some very strong active nurture, you know. So that's a phrase that I coined in my training called active nurture, where you nurture the lead to kind of get them to get off the fence. Even if they say no, that doesn't mean no. Like, okay, maybe the timing is not right. How about we get in touch in about a couple of months from now? I've had people who I spoke to 2 years ago who are coming back and saying, I got the money, I got the thing, I want to do this, let's do it.
Yep.
That pipeline is still there, you know.
I spoke to somebody, Tyson Smith, not too long ago, and he's a wholesaler, and he has a nurture sequence for his motivated leads as they come in. He has somebody calls them every day for the first 7 days. If they don't answer, they get an email every day for the next 7 days. And if they don't get that, they get an email every week for the next 6 months, and then they'll get an email every month for the next 6 months. Like they don't let any lead just dribble out.
Exactly.
I think
I
it's
mean, you
brilliant.
paid some money for that, marketing dollars for that. And you know what? I'm a firm believer that, you continue to email them till they buy or till they die.
Yeah. So
You know,
how do you address and or prevent sales burnout, sales reps burnout?
bingo. That's something that, like I said, within the first 3 months of me starting out my sales career back in 2016, the first 3 months were brutal. I almost quit. Okay. And I just said, look, this is a good experiment, but I don't think I can do it. And the owner of the company invited me to his, had a private call with me, like, Al, why do you want to quit? You're already competing with the top three. I said, yeah, but it's taking a toll on me. I'm working crazy hours. I'm sacrificing my family life. And the reason I wanted to get into something like this was to simplify my life, not complicate it. And he's like, what's the main reason? I said, well, your technical systems are not keeping up to, speed with all of the stuff. Things are broken, payment links are broken, this funnel is broken, that is broken. I
Mhm.
cannot control that. My role here is to enroll somebody. But if I cannot, when they're pulling out their credit card to buy something and I cannot take the payment, what a waste of time,
Yeah.
you know? So I, decided to kind of build systems of my own to kind of facilitate that, knowing fully well. And then the owner of the company basically said, okay, fine. You know what? He got the CIO on the phone right away on the Skype call and said, look, Alice got some issues. He's about to leave. I don't want him to leave. Do what he says. He's got a systems mind. He'll tell you what you need to do. Just implement those features that he's asking for. And boom, once he did that and expressed that sense of confidence in me, I'm like, okay, here's a person who's willing to listen to me. And things started to get better and better you know,
Oh,
and from
yeah.
there on, it just took on, where I figured out ways to not burn out, to answer your question, by kind of first identifying what is it that I want out of life? What
Mm,
does my ideal day, ideal week, ideal month look like? How many hours do I want to work? And how many hours do I want to have for social stuff, personal, professional, physical? you know all those things have to be sort of understood as to what is it that excites you, what is it that you're shooting for as your own personal KPI
yeah.
across those three things, and coming up with a balanced day. So that's why I tell people, I work 7 days a week, but I only work 2 to 3 hours per day. I'd rather work 24 hours in my own business than work 50, 60 hours in somebody else's business and make them wealthy.
Right.
So once you start thinking like an entrepreneur, you look at ways on how do you balance things out. So, in corporate America, they keep using this term, work-life balance. I don't believe in work-life balance. There is no work-life balance ever. Even in business, there will never be work-life balance. But if you start with life-work balance, put life ahead of work, and define what kind of lifestyle you want, then hey, how much money do you need to live the lifestyle you want? You identify that figure and then work towards that and say, how do I do that in a subset of the entire time that I have available in a day,
Yeah.
you know?
I
And yeah, little techniques like that that I put into place have really served me well. And it's my choice if I want to work more. There are times when I work 12-hour days even now. If I have a special project and I need to get that done, I know it's a short-term investment that I'm making for long-term gain. I will do that.
yeah. My I think too, like this whole work-life balance, the issue in my mind is like, why is it separated? I understand the negative impact of somebody who is too focused on work, but I don't think it's work that is this evil, right? I think that somebody who is obsessed with work is the same person who is obsessed with food or obsessed with the gym or obsessed with video games. I don't think that work is an issue. Work is just a tool they're using to try to escape something else or to meet a primary need in another way, and they've taken it too far. I think of my business partner. He says this more and more frequently recently because it's so true to him. He just goes, I woke up this morning, and to be clear, my business partner is a chairman in the company. He doesn't hold a role in the company.
Hmm.
So he goes, I woke up this morning. He's like, I could have gone to the gym. I could have played video games. I could have gone for a walk. He's like, but you know what I did? He's like, I woke up and I came to work because I love what I do. He's just like, my job is my hobby. And he's just like, and so long as I get absolute fulfillment out of it, he's like, I'm going to put a lot of time into it. And as soon as that becomes stressful, like you're talking about before, as soon as my cortisol levels start coming up and I'm having a hard time sleeping and I'm having a hard time managing my relationship with my wife and my kids, he goes, then I retract and I spend more time over here with family because they need me. And then school starts again, and my 16-year-old wants nothing to do with me, and my 12-year-old's off, and blah. He's just like, now I'm going to go focus on work. He's just like, it's all just a beautiful flow. And luckily for him, he's found that flow. And I think everybody needs to find it. It's not an hour number, it's not a ratio. Everybody is totally different.
Exactly,
And just
exactly. I
find your flow.
100% agree with you there. 100% agree with you there, and just to add to that, I think what I gathered from that was that he has his priorities right.
Yes.
You know, people say, I live and die by my calendar. I'm very prompt, I'm very punctual, you know, and if it's not in my calendar, it doesn't happen. So I have some assistants who basically book my calendar out and all that stuff, and block certain chunks of time. If it's pickleball, that's pickleball time. I'm going and playing pickleball. If it's a date night with my wife, it's date night. Nobody can bother me. Nobody can disturb me. So those are systems that I put in place to kind of respect the time and the space and the environment that you're in to do the things that you prioritize. So it's not a matter of prioritizing your schedule. It's more like scheduling your priorities.
I like that. Yeah, everybody in my company has access to my calendar. They know exactly when my kids' dance recitals are, when my date night is with my wife. I do it publicly to my company because
Mhm.
I also find that helpful because I'm not like opening up my phone to 37 messages from Slack when I was on a vacation or I was at the zoo yesterday with my daughter. Because
Mhm.
anybody in my company can go, "Oh, where's Drew?" I usually travel a lot. So
Mhm.
they'll check my calendar and like, "Oh, he's at the zoo with Soph." I'm not going to message him. Or it's really important. He's just at the zoo himself. I can call him on his cell phone,
Yeah.
right? So I have found balance with that, but that also came with a lot of training of the team, and my team understands me a lot as well. How would you suggest to say a sales manager to help implement this type of flow or balance or mitigate burnout with their team? Do you think that that has to do with a lot of coaching, like this type of conversation, or do you think that there's like a structured approach a sales manager should come at their team with, like kind of requiring specific time off on their calendars or things like that?
Yeah. Um, I used to be a sales director, and with my previous company, and after some time, I got a little tired of the whole administrative aspects of like doing status reports. I mean, I used to do that in corporate America. I'm like, that's not fulfilling me. So, I got the entire sales team to follow my, process and all that. But in the process, I also realized that, different salespeople are cut from different cloths and they have different priorities. For some salespeople, it's just money. How much commission can I make? You know,
Oh,
and they're just chasing the money. And person who chases money will never make it, or they'll burn out. They'll pay a price for it. You know, neglecting their health, neglecting their relationships, and then that kind of seeps into your work as well. You start making less and less deals. You're getting impatient on calls. You're not listening. All that stuff happens. So as mentoring sales, as a sales manager, what a sales manager should do is make sure that the salesperson understands that they're not just a commission sales rep, they are running a business of their own. And if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a business owner, then you got to have some KPIs for yourself
interesting.
and measure that. And
Yeah.
once you start doing that and you get them to kind of understand that, some people will get it, some people won't, and that's okay. The numbers will show it, and that the people typically who have been lagging in the sales team at the bottom 20%, well, they'll select themselves out because they're not getting paid money. They're
Yeah.
not closing deals, they're not getting money. So they themselves are like, okay, you know what? I gotta go back to the drawing board or maybe find a different career. So
Yeah.
so personal development, personal accountability, and treating yourself as a business entity or your sales, whatever, if you're incorporated, look at your numbers, have a wealth plan and say, okay, how do you get to that level that you want where you can have that fulfilled life that you define for yourself that knows how many dollars do I need at the most fundamental level and how many months can I go without having a single commission being made? If you have that figured out, then you work yourself to that point and then start to say, okay, how do I create this system that constantly generates me this bare minimum? And anything in excess is diversified into other areas so that you're not constantly worrying about like, what's going to happen. Because, some of the organizations that I've worked in, they've been amazing, except they grew too big too fast and they hired a whole bunch of people who came in from outside corporate America. They came with their own little things and they messed with everything. And next thing you know, all the money that was being generated out of the sales, the warriors of the organization was being spent on all these people who were not really doing anything other than adding more confusion to the mix.
Right.
And that's
Got
when that company started to kind of tank a little bit. And that's when you gotta know, like, it's time to eject yourself from that situation because you ran your operation as a business.
yeah.
Your client has somewhat gone on the wayside doing things that, they lost their mission and their purpose and started listening to consultants from outside and all that stuff who didn't have the best interest at heart of the company or the clients. And things happen, those sort of things happen. It happens in corporate America, it happens in small businesses, it happens in medium-sized businesses.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I've definitely experienced many companies getting too top heavy, and it becomes very detrimental. It affects every department negatively.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, confusion is not good from the top.
Exactly.
Um, so I want to talk systems a little bit here to round out
Mhm.
our podcast. Now, a lot of the listeners here are people who are growing a company and scaling, right? Like even me right now with Leadzolo, we are in the middle of scale.
Mhm.
So everything feels frantic, and I feel that I'm speaking for everybody listening here too. The business feels pretty frantic, whether it's one or two employees or 20 or 30 employees. It can always feel frantic, and then we always hear from great consultants like yourself to be like, "Oh, we should systematize things," which sounds wonderful. But how do you look at systemizing processes? Because I could go, if I wanted to, I could go lose the next 3 months of my life, not lose, but I could go pause everything I'm doing and go spend 3 months creating a process, a system, an SOP, and a loom for every part of my business and go implement it to the team. Sounds great, but I can't afford to be in my company for 3 months.
Mhm.
So I asked this question. I want to know what your thought is on the James Clear quote from Atomic Habits, where he suggests implement first, optimize second. So from that, what I'm hearing from James Clear is just go do it. Like take a sales call, right? And then at the end of the sales call, listen to it and go, let's optimize this piece and this piece. And then take those two pieces of information and go take another sales call and then listen to it
Mhm.
rather than because I think a lot of people get paralyzed in this whole I've got to write the perfect sales script, the perfect follow-up, I got to get HubSpot or whatever CRM all perfect, I got to set up all these automations, and I'm going to spend 4 months doing all of this when it's like
Mhm.
I would rather have you just talk to somebody and started to get a feel for it. So what is your thought kind of on that methodology on kind of what James Clear talks about?
Yeah, I completely agree with James Clear in that implement and then optimize as you go along. But also there's this James Keller, right? I think his name is, who's talked about the one thing, you know, identify that one thing that's causing, 80% of your sales to go down the tube because of this one thing that's been said or not being said, you know, and you got to recognize that pattern, what that pattern is after doing like not just one call, maybe doing 10 calls and saying there's a pattern here. It seems like prospect is not engaging because of this reason. Is this reason valid? If it is valid, then do something about that.
Hmm.
If it isn't, then that basically means your messaging is not on point. Fix that. So, every time look at that one thing that can move the needle forward, even just by 10%, you
So
know?
we should be analyzing for the largest fulcrum, not all of the little inconsistencies. Just
Exactly.
one at a time. What's the biggest impact in this moment? Let's
Exactly.
optimize that.
Let's optimize that, implement that, the changes in that, and then optimize that. Once you start seeing that your measurements and your KPIs are moving in the right direction, that's when you introduce technology because you see
Hmm.
technology or systems and all that in place because systems can also backfire. If you have a suboptimal process, and you're trying to optimize that and the root cause is something else, and you build a system to amplify that, you'll get more negative results. Don't do that. You
Yeah.
know, just kind of start saying, okay, I've implemented something that's producing a 1%, 10% gain in my next, whatever. That's when you optimize that to kind of handle more thing. And that's when you get that total leverage where you get a bigger output, you know. So I look at systems as a black box that you gotta work on. as the owner of the company, or you hire a consultant to kind of look at that from a fresh perspective, to look at it from a different angle based on their experience and their exposure in the industries where they've done that. And then say, okay, fine, let me, cut some slack and say, I don't want to get involved in that because I got a business to run. But
Yeah.
prove to me. And, that's why whenever I get involved in things, I basically do it and pay me only on performance. And if I meet that criteria, you got nothing to lose. It's a win-win scenario. Not just a win for the customer, not just a win for me, but also a win for my client, not just a win for me, but also a win for the prospect, because you have a transformative product. It behooves you to get that product out to the masses, that service out to the masses. You know, people are paying for value, not for time. And that's the big, um, shift that people need to have, when they go from an employee mindset to an entrepreneurial mindset.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I like that a lot. We, we're fancy now with tech, but no, we started with like we knew we had a great product and we just wanted to get it out. Actually, I can show you.
Mm-hmm.
This right here is the Leadzolo CRM that got us through our first year. This is it. That was it.
Mm-hmm.
We have HubSpot now, but yeah, I think it's important. Like get your product out first. Like build your business, and optimizing is something that you should be just kind of doing along the way.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, have that MVP, right? Minimum viable product.
Yeah.
Put it out there. You know, a lot of people are, trying to perfect perfection. Don't, just
Yeah.
put it out there, see what happens, and then say, okay, how do I improve upon that? And then, start to build around that and go
So
grow organically.
so if we look at this through the context of real estate investors and wholesalers
Mhm.
who all, they're going to say is we all have the same product, we're all selling the same thing. So that's why we're focused on sales techniques and yes sets and whatever.
Mhm.
What do you say to that? Like how would you talk to a real estate investor or a wholesaler and help them improve their sales process in terms of like their communication and their value prop and things like that to set themselves apart when in reality the next person calling that lead is essentially offering them the same thing? What would you say, like how would you go through training a sales organization or a company to think differently when it does feel like their competition is vast?
Yeah. So yeah, you got to differentiate yourself from the
Mhm.
competition in terms of how do you deal with the customer? How do you interact with the customer? You know, how does the customer feel walking away from that conversation? Do they feel good? Whether they bought or they didn't buy, right? You got to make sure that every customer that's coming and engaging with you is being treated with respect and dignity, number one. Because you don't know what's going on in their lives. In a half-hour conversation, you can't decipher all of that stuff. Have those meaningful conversations and let them off the call with either a next step, that this is what we're going to do, or leave them with saying that, look, maybe the timing is not right now, but we still care for you. We still want you to get those outcomes, but here are certain things that perhaps you need to work on at your end, and then let's plan on connecting again in so many months. So in essence, it's just treating that customer as a human being, first of all. Too many people just kind of wham bam, thank you, ma'am type stuff. So
Yeah.
avoid that. That would be my first piece of advice to them. Secondly, work on your fulfillment. There's just way too many people
Uh-huh.
who are selling something but are not fulfilling at the level that the customer expected. And that can really backfire in a really bad way,
Yeah.
where you may make some money the first few months, then after that, your brand takes a hit because they're like, and it's not because the owner didn't have the business owner didn't have the intention of fulfilling. It's just that they're just fighting too many fires that they just haven't focused on that,
Yeah.
you know. But the primary focus needs to be in your enrollment engine first, because that's what's going to bring in the money that will give you the money to kind of put into other areas that are perhaps not up to, your competitive standards. You
Yeah.
gotta, there are just too many players out there. You gotta have that unique, not just a unique proposition, but also the fulfillment in such a way where customers become raving fans on how they were sold, also and how they were fulfilled.
I like that. People, buy from people. And I think people, to say it too many times, miss that far too often. I was talking to one of the owners of a company in Phoenix, Resity. It's a wholesaling company. I do have an interest for whatever
Hmm.
reason I need to say that. But anyway, she was telling me that they start every call with, my job here is to help you. At the end of the day, so the frame they have their sales reps use is, I'm going to be evaluated on how I serve you today. And my company is going to evaluate me on that. So I'm here. Please, at any moment, tell me how I can better serve you or what more I can do for you. And that's how they start the conversation. And they said they start it this way because they want to like reach out to ask for testimonials from like successful people they've helped and stuff. Well, now they're reaching out and collecting testimonials from people who didn't even sell them their house, but they're getting testimonials because they spent, some of these people you spend 3 or 4 hours with, like trying to negotiate a term, and it just doesn't work out at the end. Doesn't mean that your sales rep didn't do a great job as a human being in all of that interaction. So that's what they're collecting testimonials on, was like, Jay so and so was working with me, and he was over multiple weeks. Unfortunately, it wasn't just a good fit for us, but my experience with Resity was phenomenal. And it's like, holy cow, I can only imagine, and I'm speculating here as a marketer, but my gosh, I bet you testimonials from people who didn't buy have got to hold more weight than a normal testimonial, right?
Yeah, you know what? I
So
agree with that. Yes, yes, I certainly, because that kind of speaks to your culture, your way of, your ethics, all of that stuff. And that is important in today's day and age, especially with the internet, because you know what? There are a lot of shady things that can happen.
yeah, what would you say to the new entrepreneur who's listening and they're looking to start their company? What advice would you have to them that would help them stay focused and less overwhelmed?
Okay. That's a great question. Nobody's ever asked me that before, but off the top of my head, what I would say is that systemize yourself first.
Ooh,
Systemize yourself first. We all wake up in the morning. What is the first thing we do? I say a prayer, okay? And then I get up and just hug my wife and then go and brush my teeth.
yep,
Subconsciously, that's what's happening. I mean, every day you do that. It's not like brushing my teeth is a choice. It's just a force of habit. It's a part of my system. And what do most people do? Well, then they look at the time and they're like, okay, I gotta grab breakfast, gotta hit my go train, at this time, get to work, and from this time to this time, my schedule is controlled by my employer. But for an entrepreneur, their entire day is available to them. There's a lot of hours, and they end up spending way too much time doing things that are not, how do I put, I call them RPAs, revenue producing activities or cash producing activities. They're focused on that little thing, making their website from red to pink, pink to purple. Like it's not going to help. That's not going to change things. Focus on the, highly leveraged every day. Look at what's the most important thing that I need to do, that one thing that I can accomplish today. And
yeah,
have I set myself some time aside to get that done? And that comes, so, you do that several days in a row, it becomes a part of your daily method of operation. So, you know, that's what I mean by systemizing yourself.
I like that. I spoke to somebody recently who explained it almost exactly the same as you. And there's somebody who's produces a ton of content. My question was like how do you how do you, is there 6 reels a day coming out plus a podcast a day, it feels like, and yada yada. And he's just like, I don't know. He's like, I wake up in the morning, I brush my teeth, I have a shower, I go to my basement studio, record the scripts that I laid out for myself the night before. It takes about 30 minutes. I send that to my editors. I go upstairs. I make breakfast for my wife and kids. I take my kid to school. I come home and then I start my workday. And like the way he said it was like as if it was like brushing his teeth. He's just like, it's just a part of the morning routine. You go downstairs, you record the script, you send them to the editor. It's like I do it 7 days a week, and it's just like brushing my teeth. And it's like, poof, to exactly your point. You just build it in. You just make it happen.
Yeah, and one of my mentors also talked about this concept called the golden hour. Each of us has a golden hour. For me, it's like between 6 and 7 in the morning when I've just woken up and done my thing and all that stuff. My brain is very lucid. I'm very creative. That's when I kind of, spend that time with myself to say, okay, and focus on some personal development, listen to some audiobooks that have been recommended by people around the entrepreneurial space, you know, and that gets the creative juices going. And use that time to invest in yourself, not on a client call, not speaking to the handyman, not talking to the neighbor, none of that. That's your most important hour. For some people, it's at 11 o'clock at night once the dust is settled and all that stuff, and everybody's gone to sleep and they get their quiet time. Different people have different times.
Yeah.
Identify that golden hour and do the most important activity around that time, and which is moving the needle forward in your business. That's
Uh,
my way
I
of
like
looking.
one of my favorite authors wrote a book specifically, the 5 a.m. Club. He used to live here in Toronto as well. Yeah, that what a great advice that is. That's I think taking that hour to myself every morning is phenomenal. I can just from my own experience, if I wake up at the same time as my 4-year-old and my wife do, I
Mm-hmm.
am waking up into reaction because the moment my 4-year-old's up, you're just in reaction mode,
Yeah.
right? Like whatever's going on and whatever my wife might need or whatever. And it's just like I feel like I wake up addressing the immediate in front of me, and I have no space to be intentional with my day. And
Mm-hmm.
so once I started giving myself that morning hour, it allowed me to be intentional, which for me personally, I don't know this to be true for everybody, completely removes my overwhelm. If I can at the beginning of my day tell myself, as long as you get these 3 things done, sometimes they're super simple things, your day's a
Mm-hmm.
win.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because if I don't tell myself that at 9 o'clock at night when I'm sitting on my couch, I'm still thinking about work and it's like, oh, did I respond to that guy? Did I do this thing? Did I do that? And so with that hour of intention, it helps me build completion by the end of my day. And that I enjoy.
Yeah. Yeah. And something else one of my mentors taught me is something called this concept of NAP, NAP, which stands for Nightly Assessment and Planning. Okay.
Hmm.
Which is you've done your day in the evening before going to bed, journaling. I don't do journaling per se, but I just come down to my office at a certain time and I write down on my board that this is what I gotta do tomorrow. This is the most important thing that I gotta do tomorrow, you know? And that way, as soon as you walk into your office, this is my, man cave in the basement of my house. I set up my office. I just look at my board. I could have easily, use my smartphone to do that, but I try not to touch my devices in the evening. I mean, it's a challenge, but I try. But coming down and writing that, actual taking that intention to kind of come down to my office and do that, and then kind of go back and give gratitude for the rest of the day. It's, I'm not saying I'm the best thing since sliced bread in doing that. It's work in progress. But these are, traits that I see of highly successful individuals, what they do, and there's an element of truth to it, right? The fact that, when you look at some people, what they do and how they actually live their lives, the habits of the highly successful people and all that stuff, you got to incorporate that and implement that, not just for namesake, but you actually got to do it. And sometimes, as you start seeing the benefits of that, it kind of validates the thought pattern there, to say, okay, this is producing some outcomes and results for myself and my clients and in my family.
Would you agree that like really it's simple? Like it is really like we all intuitively know what we should be doing. So it is really simple. And if anybody's trying to overcomplicate what you should be doing or anything like that, then that's where your issue is. Because we all know in this very moment what we should or shouldn't be doing. So I find these things in business and in life to be really simple to identify, very hard to implement, but very simple to identify. And that's why I think coaches, consultants like yourself, and things like that are tremendously useful because they help you holding people accountable to doing what they know they should be doing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I had a family member not too long ago have a coach, and her gripe was that, well, the coach didn't teach me anything new. I'm like, no, but the coach did help you implement everything you did know and weren't doing, and
Yeah.
that's what you were paying for. And I think that
Yeah.
that's important. People need to understand that.
Exactly. When you get such advice from people who, coaches and consultants, it behooves you to implement that, not just implement it for a short period of time, but build that into a routine and a habit, perhaps a ritual down the road,
Yeah,
and be consistent. Be consistent because without consistency, nothing is going to happen.
yeah, totally. So, Al, what didn't I ask you that I should have?
I think this was a great conversation, Drew. It's the first time I'm doing a podcast with somebody, and this has been fun actually. It's been fun.
Been great.
Um, yeah, no, there's nothing that you have not asked. I just wanted to make sure that I'm pretty clear in what my strengths are. I do have some weaknesses. My weaknesses are, I just got this result from one of the people who wanted to do business with me, and he wanted me to do a PI, personality, whatever index, the PI predictive indicator. And I've been called a maverick. I don't know what that means, but it basically means I, you know, I'm a nonconformist. That's a weakness that I have. But not being a nonconformist for the sake of being a nonconformist. I always like to think outside the box. You know, there are a lot of smart people who have developed solutions being in that construct. But sometimes looking at it from the outside, you get a different perspective, you know. And that comes from usually a nonconformist mind to say, look, it's not just about standard operating procedures. It's about like, why are you automating something or making that so standard that it's hurting your KPI?
Yeah.
Why don't you look at that and kind of look at a different way of maybe not just measuring the KPI, but also doing it in such a way that it's meaningful, that it actually adds positively to that KPI that you set.
Yeah. I love that. That's great. So how would people contact you if they were looking to get in contact with
Yeah,
you?
just go to ntachsolutions.com if you would like to speak with me. There's a book a consult button there. Just it's free. It'll just be a 15-minute call. It could be to talk about anything that around sales. I'm
Amazing.
not a marketing expert. I started off in marketing as an affiliate marketer, but I realized it doesn't excite me. It doesn't fulfill me. And like I said, I stumbled upon sales and conversion techniques and automating a lot of that stuff to a level where a salesperson can really enjoy that life. And that's my gift. That's what I'd like to spend, my time in helping other business owners who have transformative products that can, change the lives of people. Then, hey, I'd be more than happy to engage with them and kind of discuss a win-win scenario.
Awesome. That's fantastic. Yeah, and we'll definitely link to your website in the description wherever anybody is watching this podcast.
Fantastic.
Thank you very much, Al. It was a pleasure getting to know you. I'm sure I'll see you in a week or two. We have a
Absolutely.
mutual
I'll see
event
you
that
in
we'll be at.
Tampa. Yeah, it's happening in at the end of this month, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, I have a couple of events, so I'm not sure which time. But yeah,
Good
that's
stuff.
awesome. Thank
Drew,
you,
it's been
Al.
a pleasure talking to you. I enjoyed the opportunity, and we'll look forward to connecting again.
Wonderful. Thanks, Al.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.